The first sign that something had gone wrong was the empty chair at the dinner table. It had always been there, tucked neatly between the one used by Claire and the one used by Dad. The same smooth oak chair with the curved backrest, part of a set bought 15 years ago when they'd first moved into the house on Rosewood Lane. But that night, as the scent of roast chicken filled the kitchen and steam curled up from a bowl of mashed potatoes, the chair felt different. Empty in a way that had weight to it. Mom noticed it first. She paused while setting the plates and looked at the chair like it had spoken. Claire didn't say anything. She was too busy stabbing her green beans and checking her phone beneath the table, but her father, Henry, saw the look in Mom's eyes and gave a small shake of his head. "Let's just eat," he said. Claire didn't notice the warning in his voice, but Mom lingered near the chair for a moment longer, then turned slowly, smoothing her apron with both hands, and went to the kitchen sink, her back stiff, her shoulders tight like she was holding something in. Claire was 16, with soft brown eyes and thick, untamed hair she always wore in a bun at the top of her head. Lately, she'd taken to avoiding family dinners. That night, she'd been forced to show up only because her father had threatened to turn off the Wi-Fi, so she sat, sulking, scrolling through photos of her friends' posts online, pretending she didn't notice the strange silence at the table. "Claire," her dad said quietly. "Phone off." "Why?" she muttered, not looking up. He gave her the kind of stare that made it clear she didn't want to test him tonight. With a sigh, she turned the screen face down on the table and leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. Henry reached for the mashed potatoes. "Pass the gravy," he said, but no one moved. The empty chair stayed empty, and for a moment, nobody breathed. Mom cleared her throat. Her voice was too soft when she spoke. "He would have passed it," she said. Nobody answered. Claire shifted uncomfortably. She hated when they did this, when her parents brought up Ben like he was still here. Like he hadn't walked out 6 months ago and left everything behind. "I'm not hungry anymore," she muttered, standing up. "Sit down," Henry said. He didn't raise his voice, but there was something cold underneath it. She sank back, down, cheeks hot with frustration. Ben had been her older brother, 23 years old, smart, funny, always the favorite. He'd gotten straight A's, played guitar, helped Dad fix the fence, and took Mom to dinner on her birthday even when he was broke. He was perfect until he wasn't. Until the night he got into that shouting match with Dad in the driveway, threw his backpack into the back seat of his beat-up Honda, and sped off with the tires screaming behind him. That was the last they'd seen of him. No texts, no calls, no emails. He was just gone. Claire hated how much space he still took up in their house, every photo on the wall, every little thing in his room left untouched. His guitar still hanging above his bed, his old sneakers still under the dresser, like he was just out on a walk and would be back in an hour. It had been 6 months, 6 months of quiet dinners, of Mom staring out the window and Dad pretending everything was fine, 6 months of pretending Claire didn't miss him too. That night, the silence broke when the doorbell rang. It was so unexpected that they all jumped. Claire turned toward the hallway. Her heart gave a tiny, painful thump. Mom wiped her hands on her apron. "I'll get it," she said, her voice still shaking a little. They waited, hearing her steps down the hall, the sound of the front door unlocking. Claire couldn't help herself. She stood and crept quietly to the edge of the kitchen, listening. She heard her mother gasp. Then, "Oh, my God." Claire's chest tightened. She hurried around the corner. Standing in the doorway, holding a duffel bag and wearing the same faded hoodie he'd left in, was Ben. His hair was longer. His face looked tired. But it was him. "Hey," he said, his voice hoarse. Mom threw her arms around him, bursting into sobs. Claire's father appeared behind her and froze in place. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Claire just stood there, staring. Part of her wanted to run and hug him. The other part wanted to punch him in the arm. Ben looked at her, uncertain. "Hey, kid," he said. Claire's throat closed up. She shook her head and disappeared back into the kitchen. The gravy still hadn't been passed. Later that night, after too many tears and too many questions, they all sat in the living room. The TV was off. Nobody wanted distractions. Just words. Just explanations. Claire sat curled on the armchair, legs tucked under her. She was quiet but listening. Ben sat on the couch, hands folded. He looked nervous, older than she remembered. There were shadows under his eyes. I needed to leave, he said softly. I couldn't take it anymore. Henry looked like he was trying not to explode. So you just walked out? Didn't think to call your mother? Your sister? Ben's jaw clenched. You know exactly why I left, Dad. No, I don't. You never explained. You stormed off like a child. Because you never listened to me. You were always telling me what to do, where to work, who to be. I couldn't breathe. Don't talk to me about breathing, Henry snapped. I spent months gasping for air in this house, wondering if you were alive or dead. Silence. Fell again. Mom wiped her eyes. Ben looked down at his hands. I wasn't ready to come back. I thought maybe you didn't want me anymore. Claire couldn't hold it in. That's so stupid, she blurted. Everyone turned to her. She stood up. Do you know what it's been like here without you? Do you know how many times Mom cried in her room when she thought we couldn't hear? Or how Dad kept fixing the same broken shelf over and over just to stay busy? I hate you for leaving. But I'm glad you came back. Ben swallowed hard. I'm sorry. She didn't say anything. Just crossed her arms and looked away. Mom stood up and walked over to him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. You're home now. That's what matters. Yeah, he said quietly. But Claire could see something behind his eyes, regret and fear, as if he was afraid this peace wouldn't last. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The house felt different now, like it was holding its breath, like it had been waiting for this moment. She got up and tiptoed down the hallway. Ben's old room was slightly open. Light spilled into the hall. She knocked gently and pushed it open. He was sitting on the floor, leaning against the bed, guitar in hand. You still play? She asked. He smiled a little. Not like I used to. She sat on the edge of the bed. Why now? He looked up at her. Because I missed you. Claire blinked, caught off guard. Me? He nodded. You're my sister. I missed our dumb jokes. Your annoying laugh. The way you always stole my fries. She chuckled, a little surprised to feel tears sting her eyes. I thought you forgot about me. Never. He plucked a few strings. The sound was soft, familiar. She leaned back on her hands. Promise you won't leave again? He looked at her, serious now. I promise. Outside the window. The wind moved through the trees. The house creaked in the quiet. But for the first time in months, it didn't feel empty. Not anymore. For the first few days, everything felt strange. Not bad, just strange. Ben was back. His shoes sat neatly by the door again. His toothbrush was in the bathroom holder beside Claire's. There was a low hum of his guitar coming from his room some evenings, and the chair at the dinner table was finally filled. But even though he was home, it didn't feel like everything had gone back to normal, because too much had already changed. Claire noticed it most in the mornings. Before, the house used to be quiet when she got up. Mom would be in the kitchen, humming and frying eggs, and Dad would be in the living room reading the newspaper. Now, she woke up to whispers behind closed doors. Ben and Dad weren't talking much, not unless Mom forced them into the same room. And even then, the air between them felt heavy. One Saturday morning, Claire came down to find Ben at the kitchen table, staring into a cup of coffee like it held the answers to life. He had dark circles under his eyes, like he hadn't slept. Morning, she said. He looked up and gave her a tired smile. Hey, did you sleep? He shrugged. Tried. Claire poured herself cereal. You and Dad fought again? Ben didn't answer right away. Then he said, not really. He asked about work. I told him I didn't have any. That was enough to start something. Claire sat across from him. He asks me that too. Every day. Like school is the only thing that matters. Ben chuckled quietly. Guess he hasn't changed much. Claire watched him for a second. Why did you really come back? Ben's eyebrows lifted a little. What do you mean? I mean, was it because you missed us? Or because something went wrong out there? His face tightened. His fingers gripped the coffee cup. Claire leaned forward. Ben? He sighed. Both. She didn't say anything but waited. Ben looked out the window, his voice low. I was living in my car for a while. Claire's spoon froze in her bowl. What? After I left, I went to Chicago, tried to get a job, rent a place, start over, but it didn't work out. I ran out of money fast. Couch hopped with friends, slept in my car some nights, got sick a couple times, thought about calling you, but I was too ashamed. Claire's chest ached. Why didn't you tell us? Because I left like a jerk, he said, laughing bitterly. I thought I was proving something, thought I was grown enough to survive without help. But I was wrong. Claire pushed her bowl away. She couldn't eat anymore. Ben looked at her. You ever feel like you're drowning and nobody notices? She nodded. Yeah, sometimes. He gave her a sad smile. I think we're more alike than I thought. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the wind rustled through the backyard trees. The old swing in the garden creaked faintly, even though no one was on it. Later that afternoon, Dad came home from the hardware store. He worked there part-time on weekends, even though he didn't need to. He said it kept his hands busy. He walked into the kitchen, saw Ben sitting there, and gave a short nod. Ben nodded back. Claire waited, hoping one of them would say something first. But they didn't. Instead, Dad opened the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, and turned to go upstairs. Ben stood suddenly. Wait, Dad paused at the bottom of the stairs. Ben took a deep breath. I want to talk. Dad looked at him for a long moment, then gave a small nod. All right. They went into the living room. Claire didn't follow, but she stood in the hallway, close enough to hear. I don't expect you to forgive me, Ben said. I don't need your apology, Dad replied. There was a pause. But I am sorry, Ben continued, for the way I left, for not calling, for not being the son you wanted. I never wanted you to be perfect, Dad said. I just wanted you to be safe, to be responsible. I know, but I couldn't breathe, Dad. You had all these plans for me. College, career, everything. And I felt like I didn't have a say in my own life. Dad sat down. You think I didn't feel that pressure too? I grew up with nothing. I worked hard so I could give you and your sister more. I pushed you because I wanted you to have a better life. Ben's voice cracked a little, and I felt like I was failing you every time I didn't meet your expectations. Dad didn't say anything at first. Then very softly he said, I'm sorry too. Claire stepped back into the kitchen, her heart pounding. She wiped her eyes before anyone saw. It was a start. That evening, the whole family sat together in the living room, not watching TV, just talking. Mom brought out an old photo album from under the coffee table. The corners were frayed, and the pages stuck a little from age. Remember this? She said, pointing to a photo of Ben holding baby Claire in the backyard. Ben laughed. You were so tiny. I was scared I'd drop you. Claire rolled her eyes. I'm still tiny. They flipped through more pictures, camping trips, birthdays, Christmas mornings, Ben's first bike, Claire's first day of school, even pictures of Dad in jeans that were way too short. I forgot about all these, Ben said. Mom smiled, brushing a hand over one of the pictures. I never did. That night, as Claire lay in bed, she realized something. Forgiveness was an instant. Trust didn't grow back overnight, but love, the real kind, didn't vanish. It just waited, sometimes quietly, sometimes painfully, but it waited. The next morning, Claire woke up to the smell of pancakes. That was new. She hurried downstairs and found Ben in the kitchen, wearing an apron and flipping pancakes like a pro. You cook now? She asked, surprised. I learned a few things while I was gone, he said, grinning. She grabbed a plate. These better be good. As they ate together, laughter started to return to the table. Mom came in next, smiling at the sight of both her kids getting along. Dad followed a few minutes later, pouring himself coffee and quietly joining the table. They talked. They joked. They even made fun of Ben's messy pancakes. The chair wasn't empty anymore. The silence had been replaced by warmth, but deep down, Claire knew the journey wasn't over. There were still old wounds, still things unsaid, still cracks in the wall. But for the first time in months, they were working together to patch them up, one memory at a time. The days passed slowly, but they passed. Ben was trying. Everyone could see it. He helped Dad fix the leaking pipe under the sink, even though it took them 3 hours and flooded the kitchen twice. He offered to drive Claire to school when Mom was running late. He even took the dog on walks around the neighborhood in the early mornings. But the truth was, things still weren't quite whole. Something still hung in the air, an invisible string of tension stretched between the past and the present. And it snapped on a quiet Thursday afternoon. Claire came home from school early. She had a headache and convinced the nurse to call Mom, who picked her up after work. The house was empty when they got in. Dad was still at work, and Ben had gone out earlier that morning, saying he needed some fresh air. Claire went to her room to rest, but a noise downstairs woke her up a little over an hour later. Footsteps. The front door closing. She rubbed her eyes and peered out her window. Ben was back. He was holding something in his hand, a small white envelope. Claire stayed quiet and watched as he walked into the backyard. He sat under the old oak tree, the same one they used to climb when they were little, and just stared at the envelope in his hand. Curious, she tiptoed downstairs and out the back door, walking slowly toward him. He didn't hear her until she was almost beside him. "Hey," she said. Ben looked up, a little startled. "Oh hey, thought you were asleep." "I was. You woke me." He gave a sheepish smile. "Sorry." She pointed to the envelope. "What's that?" Ben hesitated. "A letter." Claire raised an eyebrow. "To who?" "To you, and Mom, and Dad." Claire's heart skipped. "What?" "I wrote it a few months ago," he said, not looking at her. "When I was sleeping in my car. I didn't know if I'd ever come back. But I wanted to say something, just in case." She sat down beside him slowly. The grass was cool, the shade soft around them. "Can I read it?" she asked. He didn't speak for a long moment. Then, without a word, he handed it to her. Her fingers trembled a little as she opened it. The paper inside was wrinkled, a little stained, and folded tightly. His handwriting was messy but familiar. She started reading aloud quietly. "Dear family, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know if I'll ever see you again. I just know that I've made a mess of everything. I thought I was grown, thought I knew what I wanted. I left, angry, and I stayed angry for a long time. But now I'm just tired. I miss Sunday pancakes. I miss the dog barking when I come in the door. I miss Claire making fun of my hair. I even miss Dad's long lectures. I guess what I'm trying to say is, I miss home, and I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want you to know that I love you." Even if I couldn't say it out loud before. "Love, Ben." Claire was quiet after finishing. Her eyes were wet. She folded the letter slowly and looked at him. "I'm glad you didn't send it," she said. "I'm glad you brought it home instead." Ben sniffed and nodded. They sat in silence for a long while. The kind of silence that feels like a hug. Then Claire asked, "Did you ever think about not coming back at all?" Ben nodded. "Yeah, plenty of times." "What changed your mind?" He looked at her, eyes red but steady. "I saw a little girl in the park one day. She reminded me of you. She was running around laughing, chasing butterflies. And I remembered how you used to do that. How you made me promise to never let anything bad happen to you." Claire smiled faintly. "I was 5. You were my hero." Ben gave a sad chuckle. "I'm sorry I stopped being that." She touched his arm. "You didn't. You just got lost." For a bit. That night, Ben gave the letter to Mom. She read it at the kitchen table with shaking hands. Her shoulders trembled, and by the time she reached the last line, she was crying. "I thought I'd never hear those words," she whispered. Ben hugged her from behind, and she held his arms tightly. Later, when Dad came home, Ben gave the letter to him too. He didn't cry. He read it silently, lips tight, then folded the paper carefully and set it on the counter. "I've missed you every day since you left," he said. Ben's voice cracked. "I know." That night, they had dinner together. No arguments, no silence. Just simple, easy talk, jokes, memories, the warmth that had been missing. Claire looked around the table and felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. But even with that peace, something else was starting to grow. A new understanding. A new question. What now? Over the next few days, Ben began talking more about what he wanted. "I don't want to run anymore," he said one evening while helping Claire with her homework. She looked up. "So, what are you going to do?" He smiled. "I think I want to stay. For real this time." "You mean, get a job? Go back to school?" He nodded. "Yeah, maybe even take some night classes. I've been thinking about teaching. Maybe music." Claire's eyes lit up. "You'd be a great teacher." "You think so?" "You taught me how to climb trees and play the keyboard. I turned out okay." Ben laughed. "Barely." She threw a pillow at him. Later, he told Mom and Dad his plan. They were surprised, but proud. Henry nodded. "If you're serious about this, I'll help you. Whatever you need." "I mean it," Ben said. "I want to build something, not just for me, but for you guys. I want to earn back your trust." "You already started," Mom said, smiling gently. And it was true. Slowly, the house that had once felt broken was starting to feel full again. Not perfect, but real. And real was enough. One weekend, they all went to the park. The same park where they used to go when Claire was little, where Ben had taught her to ride a bike, where Mom always packed too much food and Dad always brought the camera. This time, it was Claire who took the pictures. Ben sat on the bench with Mom, tossing pieces of bread to the ducks. Dad stood under a tree, smiling, arms crossed. Claire snapped a photo of them all. As she looked at the image on her phone, she saw something she hadn't seen in a long time. Laughter. Connection. Family. Later that night, she printed the photo and taped it to the fridge. Ben walked by, paused, and looked at it for a long time. Then he said quietly, "Thanks for not giving up on me." Claire replied just as softly, "Thanks for coming home." The fridge hummed. The dog barked outside. A car drove by. But in that moment, everything was still. Everything was whole. For the first time in a long time, Claire believed in second chances, and more than anything else, she believed in family. It started with a phone call, a quiet evening, just after dinner. The dishes were drying on the rack, the TV was playing a movie no one was really watching, and the dog was curled up under Ben's feet. Claire was on the couch beside Mom, drawing lazy circles in her sketchbook while Dad scrolled through his phone. Then the phone rang. It was Mom's cell phone. She picked it up with a gentle, "Hello?" Her voice changed almost immediately. Her back straightened. Her face grew pale. Claire and Ben both looked up. "Yes. Yes. This is her." "What happened?" Mom asked. There was a long pause, then "Oh my God." She stood up quickly and walked into the hallway, one hand on her mouth, the other gripping the phone tight. Claire felt her stomach twist. "What's going on?" she whispered. Ben stood too, heart racing. He followed slowly, stopping at the edge of the hallway where Mom stood with her back to them. When she finally turned around, her eyes were red. "That was the hospital," she said. "It's your Uncle Joe. He had a heart attack." Claire gasped. "What? But he's young." Mom nodded, wiping her cheek. "Only 54. They said he's stable, for now. But it was bad. They're keeping him overnight for observation." Dad came over quickly. "We should go see him." Mom shook her head. "They said no visitors tonight. Just family tomorrow morning." Ben looked down. Uncle Joe was Dad's younger brother. Always loud, always laughing. He used to sneak candy into Claire's pocket when she was little and call Ben the guitar genius. His jokes filled the room, and he always wore mismatched socks. Now he was lying in a hospital bed. Just like that, the next morning, Mom and Dad went to the hospital. Lakeler stayed home, sitting on the porch swing with Ben. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Then Claire said quietly, "I didn't know heart attacks could just happen." "They can," Ben replied, "sometimes without warning." Claire looked at him. "You think Dad's okay?" Ben nodded slowly. "He's strong. But something like this, it makes people think about life differently." Claire rested her head against a swing chain. "I hate how life can change in 1 second." Ben looked out at the sky. "It's why we have to say things while we still can." When Mom and Dad came back that afternoon, Mom looked tired, but calmer. "He's okay," she said. "They're keeping him for a few days, but he should recover." Everyone let out a breath they didn't know they were holding, but something had shifted. Dad seemed quieter that evening. He didn't argue about the news channel, didn't complain about the burnt toast. He just sat beside Mom, holding her hand. Claire noticed it. Ben did too. The next few days, Dad started making changes. He threw away his stash of sugary snacks, started walking every morning, got a checkup at the clinic, something he'd been avoiding for years. He even sat down one evening and started talking to Ben, not about jobs or responsibility, but about music. "You still play that old Beatles song?" he asked. Ben smiled. "Which one?" "The one Mom used to hum around the house. She said you learned it just to surprise her." "Let it be?" Ben asked. Dad nodded. "Yeah, that one." Ben went to his room and came back with the guitar. He sat on the edge of the couch and began to strum the soft chords. Claire watched from the hallway. The music filled the house like warm sunlight, slow and comforting. Dad closed his eyes. Mom leaned her head on his shoulder. When Ben finished, no one clapped. No one spoke. They just sat there, letting it sink in. Sometimes healing didn't come in words. Sometimes it came in quiet songs. The following weekend, something else changed. Claire found Ben in the garage, cleaning out boxes. "You okay?" she asked. He looked up, wiping sweat from his brow. "Yeah, just clearing some old stuff." She stepped closer. "Like what?" He held up an old photo album. "High school memories, letters, junk I thought I'd want forever." Claire opened the book. There were pictures of Ben at prom, at graduation, holding his first paycheck at the music store. He looked younger, lighter. "You were happy," she said. Ben leaned against the wall. "I was." "So what happened?" He shrugged. "Life. Pressure. Fear. I don't know. I started thinking I had to be perfect. And when I wasn't, I ran." Claire touched the edge of a photo. "But you came back." He looked at her. "And I'm still scared. Every day. That I'll mess up again." She looked at him seriously. "We don't need perfect. We just need you." Ben smiled, a little shaky. "Thanks." He picked up a dusty showbox and handed it to her. "Wanna help me throw out some regrets?" Claire peeked inside. Old report cards, rejected college letters, an unopened birthday card from Dad, dated the year Ben left. Her hand froze on it. "You never opened this?" Ben shook his head. "I couldn't." She handed it to him. "Maybe now's the time," she said gently. He took it, hesitating, then slowly peeled it open. Inside was a card with a picture of a guitar on the front. Inside, in Dad's neat handwriting, were just a few words. "No matter where you are, this house will always be your home. Love, Dad." Ben closed his eyes. Claire saw tears slip down his cheek. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Later that evening, Ben handed the card to Dad. "I read it," he said. Dad looked surprised. "I wasn't sure if you ever did. I wasn't ready then. I am now." Dad nodded slowly. "That card. It was my way of saying I still believed in you, even when you disappeared." Ben sat down. "You know, I used to think you were disappointed in me, that you wanted me to be someone else. I wanted you to be safe. I wanted you to be proud of yourself. I am now," Ben said softly, "because I came back." Dad reached over and squeezed his shoulder. "I'm proud of you too. Always have been." Claire stood in the kitchen watching, and she thought to herself, this is what healing looks like. Not big moments, not loud apologies, but small choices. Listen, speak, stay. One night, the power went out. A storm hit the neighborhood. Wind, lightning, thunder shaking the windows. The whole house was dark, but instead of panicking, they lit candles. Mom made hot chocolate on the gas stove. Ben grabbed his guitar. They all sat in the living room, wrapped in blankets, sipping their drinks, and listening to the soft strum of strings. Outside, the storm howled, but inside, everything was calm. The family that had once been broken was now sitting close, laughing, remembering, holding on. And in that moment, Claire realized something. Storms didn't always destroy. Sometimes they cleared the air. Sometimes they made people come closer. And sometimes they reminded you just how much you didn't want to lose what you still had. 3 months had passed since Ben came back home. The seasons were changing. Summer was fading into fall. The trees along Rosewood Lane were beginning to drop their leaves, each one a soft reminder that time keeps moving even when we don't want it to. Claire stood at the window one morning, watching the wind push golden leaves across the yard. The house behind her was quiet, peaceful. For once, she didn't hear yelling anymore. And no more slammed doors, or empty chairs, or long stretches of silence. There was laughter now, conversations, real hugs, and for Claire, that meant everything. Ben had enrolled in community college. He was taking night classes twice a week, studying music education. He'd even gotten a part-time job at the music shop downtown, where he tuned guitars and gave lessons to kids on weekends. He'd changed. Not all at once, but slowly, bit by bit. Claire could see it in the way he smiled more easily, the way he helped with dinner, the way he asked how her day was, and actually listened to the answer. One afternoon, Ben walked into the kitchen and said something she didn't expect. "I think I want to move out." Claire froze. "What?" He held up his hands quickly. "Not far. Just the apartment complex near the library. It's close, but I think it's time." Claire stared at him. "You're leaving again?" "I'm not running away," he said, gently. "This time, I'm doing it the right way." She didn't know what to say. Ben walked over, his voice soft. "You'll still see me all the time. I need to stand on my own 2 feet. And I want you to know that it's not because of anything here. You helped me feel whole again." Claire blinked hard. "I just got you back." He smiled. "And I'm not going anywhere this time." "Not really." Mom and Dad were surprised when he told them, but supportive. Dad even offered to help him move when the time came. Claire tried to be brave. She smiled. She nodded. She helped Ben look at furniture online, but her heart was heavy. She wasn't ready to say goodbye again. Moving day came fast. The family spent the whole Saturday loading Ben's boxes into Dad's truck. Ben didn't have much, just some clothes, his books, the guitar, and a few old keepsakes. But it still felt like a lot. As they drove to the apartment, Claire stared out the window in silence. She remembered the last time Ben had left. The shouting, the heartbreak. But this time was different. This time, he was still her brother. Still here. They carried everything inside and helped him set up his small living room. The apartment smelled new. The walls were clean and bare. Mom wiped down the kitchen counter like it was her own. Dad fixed a wobbly chair without being asked. Claire sat on the couch, arms wrapped around her knees, watching. Ben stood beside her and nudged her gently. "You okay?" "No," she said. He laughed softly. "Me neither." They hugged tightly. For a long time before the family left, Ben looked around the room and said, "This place will be quiet without you guys." "Good," Dad said, smirking. "You'll finally get some rest." Everyone laughed. Claire looked around one last time before they left. It felt like closing a chapter. That night, the house felt a little emptier. One less voice, one less light. On upstairs, Claire sat in Ben's old room, now bare except for a folded blanket on the bed and a photo of them both from the park, still pinned to the wall. She reached for it. A soft knock came at the door. It was Mom. "Can I sit?" Claire nodded. Mom walked in slowly and sat beside her on the bed. They looked at the photo together. "Do you remember when he used to sing to you before bed?" Mom asked. Claire smiled. "I do. You were scared of the dark. He used to sit beside you with that broken flashlight and hum lullabies." Claire leaned her head on her mom's shoulder. "Do you think he'll be okay?" Mom placed a hand on hers. "He already is. He came back to us, Claire. That means something." Claire nodded. Then she whispered, "I'm scared something bad will happen again." Mom was quiet for a moment, then said, "Bad things will always happen. But now we know how to hold on to each other. That's what matters." Claire didn't say anything. She just leaned into the comfort. A few weeks later, it happened. Another phone call. But this one wasn't about Ben. It was about Dad. He was on his way home from work, driving down Oak Ridge Hill, when another car ran a red light, hit the passenger side, flipped the truck into a ditch. The hospital called Mom again. Claire was frozen in place when she heard the news. It was like all the air had left the room. They rushed to the hospital. The drive felt like forever. Ben met them in the parking lot, still in his work clothes. His face was pale. He held Claire's hand tight as they walked into the emergency room. The nurse told them Dad was in surgery. Head injury, broken ribs, internal bleeding. Hours passed. Long, heavy hours. No one talked much. Mom sat still in her chair, hands clenched tightly. Claire stared at the clock. Ben paced the hallway over and over. When the doctor finally came out, everyone stood. He's alive, the doctor said. He's in recovery. We're watching him closely, but he made it. Tears came fast. Relief, so heavy it almost knocked them all to their knees. Ben hugged Mom tightly. Claire buried her face in his chest. It wasn't over yet, but it could have been. Too close. Too sudden. Too real. Dad stayed in the hospital for a week. He came home with a cane and a list of things he couldn't do for a while. But he was alive, talking, laughing even. Guess that truck didn't like me much. He joked one afternoon. Claire smiled. We like you more. The accent changed something in all of them. Not just fear, but awareness. Time is short. Even the people we think will always be here won't be here forever. So one night, they had a new tradition, a family night. Every Sunday evening. No phones, no TV, just dinner, stories, and each other. Ben came every time, sometimes with a bag of groceries, sometimes with new songs he'd written. One night, he brought a song he called Hold On Before It's Gone. He played it after dinner, sitting on the living room floor. His voice was soft, gentle. The lyrics were about remembering the little things, the sound of a laugh, the smell of Mom's perfume in the hallway, the way Dad said, "You're doing fine," even when things were falling apart, and the way Claire used to hum herself to sleep when the night was too quiet. When the song ended, no one clapped, they just sat still, letting the love soak in. Later that evening, Claire stood by the window again, just like she had before. Leaves danced across the lawn, and she whispered to herself, "Family isn't perfect. It's not always easy, but it's worth holding on to." She closed her eyes, and in her mind, she saw it. The dinner table, all the chairs filled, laughter, music, warm hands, and love. Real love. The kind you fight for. The kind you forgive for. The kind you remember to value. The end.